सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय, नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद से अद्वैत गदाधर शिवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गौ गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरिवर्धन की जय, वृंदावन धाम की जय, नवद्वीप धाम की जय, स्वामी तो भक्तवृंद की जय, गंगा माई की जय, जमुना माई की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय। Bhakti Devi ki jai, Swami the Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glories to the assembled Lord. All glories to the assembled Lord. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat KRISHNA Prabhupada, all glories to Gurudev, and all glories to assembled Vaishnavi devotees. We thank you for being here today. We are very much blessed. We have His Grace Advaita Krishna Prabhu, who will be speaking to us from the Srimad Bhagavatam today. And of course, Prabhuji needs no introduction. He is one of our big brothers and mentor to lots of us on this platform. And he's been so kind and generous, appearing and sharing his love and wisdom with us. And today, the beginning of the week, Monday, we have his presence here. So, Prabhuji, you're welcome
Hare Krishna.
to your own
Hare
home.
Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare
Dona
Krishna.
Pranam.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. So, without further ado, we may put the verse on the screen and you may start sharing with us.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I can start with my Mangalacharan prayers.
Yes, please. Yes.
Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaiham Dadati Savatantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Shri Yutada Kamalam Sri Gurung Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raguna Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Barijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Vishakhan Vitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kantha Radha Kantha Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna. So thank you very much for offering me this wonderful opportunity, beginning of year 2024, to sit down with all of you and discuss Srimad Bhagavatam, which is very dear to all the Vaishnavas. So today we are reading from second canto, chapter 7. Chapter 7 is entitled Scheduled Incarnations. And today's text is 47. Hare Krishna. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Narang Chaiva Narottamam Deving Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet. Nastaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Well, dear devotees, it seems we have a technical hitch, and Prabhu would be back. Yes.
Something happened, I lost it, or you lost me?
Yeah, okay, so we'll put it back.
Sashvat prashantam abhayam pratibodhamatram shudham samam sadasatta paramatma tattvam sabdo nayatra purukarakavam kriyartho maya paraitya bhimuke chavila jamana tadvai padang bhagavata paramasya pumso भ्रमेति यद विधुर अजस्र सुखम vishokham. A word meaning Sashvat, eternal, Prashantam, without disturbance, Abhayam, without fear, Pratibodhamatram, a consciousness opposed to a material counterpart, Shuddham, uncontaminated, Samam, without distinction, Sadasataha, of the cause and effect, Paramatma Tattvam, the principle of primeval cause, Shabdaha, speculative sound, Na, not, Yatra, where there is, Puru Karakavan, resulting in fruitive action, Priyartha, for the matter of sacrifice, Maya, illusion, Pariti, flies away, Abhimukhe, in front of, Cha, also, Vilajamana, being ashamed of, that, Vai, is certainly, Padam, ultimate phase, Bhagavata, of the personality of Godhead, Paramasya, of the Supreme, Pumsaha, of the person, Brahma, the Absolute, Iti, thus, Yat, which, Viduhu, known as, Ajashra, unlimited, Sukham, happiness, Vishokham, without grief. Translation: what is realized as the absolute Brahman is full of unlimited bliss without grief. That is certainly the ultimate phase of the Supreme Enjoyer, the personality of Godhead. He is eternally void of all disturbances and fearless. He is complete consciousness as opposed to matter, uncontaminated and without distinctions. He is a principal, primeval cause of all causes and effects, in whom there is no sacrifice for fruitive activities, and in whom the energy does not stand. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Enjoyer, the personality of Godhead, is the Supreme Brahman, or the Samam Bonam, because of his being the supreme cause of all causes. The conception of impersonal Brahman realization is the first step due to his distinction from the illusory conception of material existence. In other words, impersonal Brahman is a feature of the Absolute distinct from the material variegatedness, just as light is a conception distinct from its counterpart, darkness. But the light has its variegatedness, which is seen by those who further advance in the light. And thus, the ultimate realization of Brahman is the source of the Brahman light, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Summum Bonum, or the ultimate source of everything. Therefore, meeting the personality of Godhead includes the realization of the impersonal Brahman as realized as first, in contrast with material inebriety. The personality of Godhead is the third step of Brahman realization. As explained in the first canto, one must understand all three features of the Absolute, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Pratibodhamatram is just the opposite conception of material existence. In matter, there are material miseries, and thus in the first realization of Brahman, there is a negation of such material inabilities. And there's a feeling of eternal existence, distinct from the pangs of birth and death, disease, and old age. That is the primary conception of impersonal Brahman. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Soul of everything, and therefore, in the Supreme Conception, affection is realized. The conception of affection is due to the relationship of soul to soul. A father is affectionate to his son because there's some relationship of nearness between the son and the father. But that sort of affection in the material world is full of inebriety. When the personality of Godhead is met, the fullness of affection becomes manifest because of the reality of the affectionate relationship. Because of the reality of the affectionate relationship. He is not the object of affection by the material tinges of body and mind, but he is a full, naked, uncontaminated object of affection for all living entities because he is a super soul or Paramatma within everyone's heart. In the liberated state of affairs, the full-fledged affection for the Lord is awakened. As such, there is an unlimited flow of everlasting happiness without the fear of its being broken, as you have experienced here in the material world. The relationship with the Lord is never broken, thus there is no grief and no fear. Such happiness is inexplicable by words, and there can be no attempt to generate such happiness by fruitive activities, by arrangements and sacrifices. But we must also know that happiness, unbroken happiness, exchanged with the Supreme Person, the personality of God, it is described in this verse, described in this verse, transcends the impersonal conception of the Upanishads. In the Upanishads, the description is more or less negation of the material conception of things, but it is not denial of the transcendental senses of the Supreme Lord. Herein also, the same is confirmed in the statement that the personality of Godhead are made of material elements. That the same is affirmed in the statement that the Supreme Lord is pure, Shuddham. The word Shuddham indicates that the senses of the personality of Godhead are not made by the material elements. They are all transcendental, free from all contamination of material identification. And also, the liberated souls are not devoid of senses. Whereas, otherwise, there cannot be any reciprocation of unhampered spiritual happiness, exchanged between them in spontaneous unbroken joy. All the senses, both of the Lord and of the devotees, are without material contamination. They are so because they are beyond the material cause and effects, as clearly mentioned herein. Sadasata Param. The illusory material energy cannot work there, being ashamed before the Lord and his transcendental devotees. In the material world, the sense activities are not without grief. But here it is clearly said that the senses of the Lord and the devotees are without any grief. There is a distinct difference between the material and spiritual senses, and one should understand it without denying the spiritual senses because of a material conception. The senses in the material world are surcharged with material ignorance, In every way, the authorities have recommended purification of the senses from the material conception. In the material world, the senses are manipulated for individual and personal satisfaction. Whereas in the spiritual world, the senses are properly used for the purpose for which they were originally meant, namely the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Such sensual activities are natural, and therefore sense gratification there is uninterrupted and unbroken by material contamination, because the senses are spiritually purified. And such satisfaction of the senses is equally shared by the transcendental reciprocators. Since the activities are unlimited and constantly increasing, there is no scope for material attempts or artificial arrangements. Such happiness of transcendental qualities called Brahma Shaukyam, which will be clearly described in the 5th canto. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, did I lose it? No, it's here. Hare Krishna. Sashwat prashantam abhayam pratibodhamatram shudham samam sarasat paramatma tattvam shabdo na yatra purukara kavam kriyartho maya pareti abhimuke cha vilachamana tadvai padam bhagavata paramasya pumsam brahmeti yad vidhur ajasya shukham vishokham. What is realized as the absolute Brahman is full of unlimited bliss without grief. That is certainly the ultimate phase of the supreme enjoyer, the personality of Godhead. He is eternally void of all disturbances and fearless. His complete consciousness as opposed to matter, uncontaminated and without distinction. He is a principle of the primeval cause of all effects, cause and effects, in whom there is no sacrifice for fruitive activities and in whom the illusory energy does not stand. Hare Krishna. Thank you. So, this is 7th chapter, is full of transcendental description of Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his various incarnations, starting right from the beginning of the chapter, and the description of all the different incarnations are there. And then the description of Paramatma is also to a point described. And then from now on, this is the explanation of actually what is Brahman. But description of Paramatma and Brahman is done together. Again here from this verse onward, 47, 48, and 49. Basically, what is being said here is that Paramatma is eternally peaceful and fearless. He bestows knowledge, is pure and equal to all. From the word sama, being pure and equal to all, that is actually the description of Paramatma. So, understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead is done in understanding in 3 aspects called pada. And that is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam, Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Sabdyate. That is, Supreme Absolute Truth is realized in 3 stages. It is realized as Brahman, as Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And this is at the end of the first paragraph of the purport. The personality of Godhead is the 3rd step of Brahman realization. So the first step is actually Brahman realization. The 2nd step is Paramatma realization. And the 3rd step is Bhagavan realization. Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattamadhyanamadvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabdyate. The Supreme Absolute Truth is realized in 3 stages or in 3 padas, as Brahman, as Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So, Paramatma is actually sama, is equal to all in every way. Paramatma has a relationship with the soul in the sense that it is actually the supervisor of the soul in the material world. Without the supervisor, Upadushta anumantascha bhokta bhakta maheshwara. Right? Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13. So without the supervisor, the soul cannot properly function in the material world. So Paramatma is a neutral supervisor. So therefore, having a relationship, Prabhupada actually goes on to explain about the relationship of the Supreme Lord, with the Supreme Lord. But with Paramatma, can we or can't we have a relationship? He is generally neutral. But one is inclined towards understanding the Supreme Lord, then in the initial stages, Paramatma may reciprocate in a way with us according to our guna and karma, according to our qualification or disqualification. But generally, whether it is the soul in the body of Lord Brahma, or the soul in the body of an animal, or the soul in the body of a plant, Paramatma is sama. Sama means he is actually neutral. So it says Shuddham. In the first part, he said Shashwat Prashantam Abhayam Pratibodhamatram. Means that actually he is without fear, abhayam, without disturbance. So the soul may experience fear, the soul may experience disturbance because of its misidentification with the body. But Paramatma, sitting as a supervisor in the body of the embodied jiva, he doesn't feel any fear, and he doesn't have any material counterpart. And therefore, it is also described here as uncontaminated. And samam means that it is same, it is neutral. And satasat, of the cause and effect. And this is Paramatma Tattvam, the principle of the primeval cause, which is Paramatma. This is the description of Paramatma here. So now the next part is describing actually Brahman. It's describing Brahman how Shabdo Nayatra Purukara Kavam Kriyartho. That is, Brahman cannot be described by anything in word. Shabdo Pare Brahman. It is beyond the description of word. Why? Because word requires description using sentences, requires an object and subject, requires a verb, requires a noun, requires different components to make a sentence. But Brahman doesn't have any quality to describe. So because Brahman doesn't have any quality, Shabdo na yatra, it doesn't have any quality that we can describe. So the meaning of word in description of Brahman is useless. So that's what it is said here. Speculative sound, which is word or shabda. No, not yatra, where there is. It's impossible. The next description is Brahman. Brahman is unaffected by any kind of fruitive result, any kind of fruitive action from the part of anything, anyone from this part of the world. That is, for those who are embodied and have senses, and we may have desires and mind and intelligence and body and so on, we may actually engage in fruitive activities. But Brahman is unaffected by these things. So who are affected by fruitive activities are those actors of these material natures, the devatas, the personalities who are the controlling counterparts of this creation, Prakriti. So because Brahman is beyond Prakriti, and knowing that the material qualities of Prakriti are used to describe even the higher aspect of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is Bhagavan. In the Vedas, in the prayers of the personified prayers in the 10th canto in chapter 87, there's a very interesting description that the Vedas cannot properly even describe the Supreme Absolute Truth and even describe Brahman, but beyond Brahman is actually Bhagavan. Why? Because there is all the words that we have, all the shabda, all the images and all the knowledge we have of the material world, like for example, saying Krishna is Ghanasham, that he's the color of the cloud, or Krishna is wearing Kanaka, yellow clothes, which means that we have a conception of yellow and cloth in this material world, and we are trying to describe Krishna's clothing in terms of those descriptions, but doesn't fully describe because we are using material words. So that's what it says here. Shabdona yatra purukar kavam kriyartho maya pareti abhimukya cha vilajamana. And Maya, Prakriti, material nature, is standing there, vilajamana. Laja means she's ashamed. Why is she ashamed? Because she doesn't have the ability to give us, to yield unto us a full knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore she's ashamed. Tat vai padam bhagavata paramasya pumsam. Because he is completely opposed to matter. So how can matter or Prakriti or material nature help to describe him? He is without description. And he is a primeval cause of all causes. He is a upadhana. He is a cause of all the ingredients of creation, in whom there is no sacrifice for fruitive activities and in whom the illusory energy does not stand. So Brahman is a very interesting concept. Brahman is a concept of the Lord's greatness, all pervasiveness. That's all. Doesn't have any quality. But it is what is a frontier between Brahman and material nature. It's where material nature ceases to exist. Brahman starts. Because material nature only exists with its qualities embedded and presented in the modes of material nature, with the help of the modes of material nature. And Brahman does not have anything to do with the modes of material nature. So when we go beyond Prakriti, then the higher Bhavam, the higher level, is actually the first step in God realization, which is called Brahman. So this Brahman, this is Sanam Bomam, but now there is beyond the Brahman, there's also Paramatma, and there's also Bhagavan. But it is wrong to say there is also this and also that, because it is all one. Because beyond Prakriti, beyond the material creation, we only have one absolute truth. That is Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. It is just realized in 3 phases. So here the description is being given of Paramatma in the first 2 lines, and then Brahman, which is known as unlimited happiness and freedom from grief. Why is it described like that? Because a jnani wants to get away from grief, from birth, death, experience of anything of temporary nature, and he or she or the jiva wants to experience eternal happiness. So therefore, the very first description of one of the qualities that one will experience in Brahman, even though Brahman is quality-less, is unlimited happiness. Why? Because of its attaining a stage beyond Prakriti, beyond the limits of material nature, beyond the limits of material creation, where what is symptomatic of material nature and material creation is misery, it's grief. So the jnani who is pursuing spiritual life by negation. So by negation means I do not want this, I do not want this, I am not this body, I am not the senses, I am not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. When you remove all the coverings of material nature and all the different ingredients of material nature, then what remains is pure Brahman. So therefore it is achieved by negation. This is what Prabhupada is saying. It is achieved by negation. So this is the first step. So then we go to Pratibodha Matram, which is just the opposite conception of material existence. So the opposite conception of material existence is, I'm reading the second paragraph. In matter, there are material miseries, and thus in the first realization of Brahman, there is a negation of such material inebrities, and there's a feeling of eternal existence, which means, oh, finally, I am over with the body. I'm over with the senses. I am over with the modes of material nature. Finally, I've reached cruising speed in an aeroplane, which will never land, so to speak. It's like one example was given by one of our teachers. Said when you first go into an aeroplane for the first few hours, you're all excited. You say, "Wow, it's nice. I'm getting away from this. I'm leaving everything behind." And then the first few hours, you're looking everywhere and you're excited. You're looking at this and you're looking at that, and then you can imagine yourself now 5 hours in the flight. And then you start to feel a certain sense of boredom. And then you feel a sense of nothingness. You don't know what is happening, where you're going, where you are, where you're not. There's no coordinates that can explain if you're not hearing the pilot. But then an announcement is coming where we've reached an altitude, and now we're going to cruise forever, and we're not going to land. This is the feeling of Brahman. That is, you are going into some kind of nothingness with no quality. Yes, you left all the material sufferings at the airport of the material body, but then there is nothing beyond that. So there is nothing of this pratibodha, nothing that can be described. But at least you are free from the material miseries. And thus it is the first realization of Brahman. So actually one cannot, but here it is described that the Brahman gives full happiness. But it gives full happiness by negation of all material miseries. And there's a feeling of eternal existence distinct from the pangs of birth and death, disease and old age. This is a primary conception of impersonal Brahman. So this is describing from the line Pratibodha Matram, is describing actually the Brahman. So let's read the next part. The Supreme Lord is the supreme soul of everything, and therefore, in the supreme conception, affection is realized. Now, there's two things here we've discussed. There's a neutrality in Paramatma, which means that there is the function of Paramatma is not to show you any affection. The function of Paramatma is to be your supervisor. It is very hard to accept this concept because when Krishna speaks about him being the Paramatma, the super soul, Krishna is actually mixing two things, him being Paramatma, but him also being your friend, him also being Bhagavan. But if you really understand the technical, the philosophical understanding of Paramatma, he is neutral to everyone. Because if someone wants to kill a devotee, Paramatma is just going to say, okay. But if he was really that anchored into the protection of the devotee, he would actually do something, but it's not his function. So Paramatma is very neutral. So Brahman, no relationship. Paramatma is very neutral. So now Prabhupada goes into the third realm of explanation. The Supreme Lord is the supreme soul of everything, and therefore in the supreme conception, affection is realized. So Paramatma level, there's hardly any affection because he's neutral. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that I am equal to all. I have no one I favors and no one I dislike. There's so many verses describing like that. Samoham sarva bhuteshu na me dvesti stinopriya. I don't have someone I dislike and someone that I like more. So that is also samoham, sama, again the same word, samoham sarva bhuteshu. So Paramatma has a functional role as a supervisor of material creation, which the Lord creates, right? In the all-pervasive absolute reality of Brahman. So the absolute reality of Brahman, where everything exists, the Lord creates within that and creates a boundary of material energy. And then he creates the material universes within that. So where do we have affection? We have affection, we have relationship in the material world. But then they are false relationships, they are false affections. They are false in the sense that they're not related to the soul, they are sat. They are related to the different ingredients that's provided by Maya, by Prakriti. And therefore, we are trying to have a relationship with those creations of Maya with our own mind, body, and senses. And that's why it is described here, Maya is Savilaja. She's put her head down, she's bashful, and she is ashamed. Because she's got the service to put the jivas in this kind of illusion, where they can pretend to have a relationship with something that is illusory. So the word there is described as Maya paraiti abhimukhe javilajamana, being ashamed of, in front of, right? That ultimate phase, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Maya is actually ashamed, but that's what her service is. So therefore, we have a relationship in this material world, great, but they're not true relationships because they're relationship with the surface that is covering the senses, the surface that is covering the soul. And at the platform of Brahman, there's only existence. There's a realization of Sat. I am eternal. There's no full realization of Chit. I have full knowledge. There is not this full realization of Ananda. Krishna is Sachit Ananda. He's not just Sat. He's also Chit, he's Ananda. So the principle of knowledge is coming from Paramatma, like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Sarvasya chaham ridishan-nivito matasmriti jnanam pohanam cha. So the understanding of Chit, of knowledge, is also coming from the Supreme Lord. So it's technical, but we're trying to understand this verse because this is actually the description of Paramatma and Brahman, and then establishing Bhagavan as the ultimate phase of understanding the absolute truth. So the supreme absolute truth is the conception, the supreme conception where affection is realized, true affection is realized. That is, the soul has a relationship with the supreme soul. And there's a feeling of eternal, and there's a feeling that we have a relationship, just like the father is affectionate to his son, because there's some relationship of nearness between the son and the father. But that sort of affection in the material world is full of inebriety. It is not what it should be. And when the personality of Godhead is met, so beyond Brahman, beyond Paramatma, we meet Bhagavan. Then on that platform, we realize our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Raso Vaisaha. Krishna is described as Raso Vaisaha, which means that his bliss, his ananda. And that's our full realization of Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when we go in depth into Brahman understanding and trying to negate everything and trying to go into philosophical speculation, we will finish with our sinful activities and will end up in Brahman. And then the yogis, that is a jnani, I mean, and the yogis, what they do, there's two types of yogi, the attached yogi and the unattached yogi, the detached yogi. It's described in the second canto too. The attached yogi, he has desires to develop mystic powers. So he tries to develop the connection with Paramatma, which is his immediate neighbor in his heart. And then he wants to be able to enjoy all the mystic powers that is awarded to him by this realization. And then he will end up in the higher echelons of the material world, in the higher planetary systems of the material world, like Siddhalok and so on and so forth. And the unattached yogi, he wants to develop his understanding of Paramatma. And if he does not fail and being tricked by Maya that he is Paramatma, then he will not fall down, but he will end up also in Brahmajyoti, because with Paramatma, he is a neutral form of the Lord. He is not so much interested in developing a relationship with us. He does not particularly occupy an eternal dham. So what will he award is also Brahmajyoti. So then we go beyond that, trying to develop a relationship with the Supreme Absolute Truth in the form of a person. Prabhupada gives the example of a father and a son. And he said, as such, there is an unlimited flow of everlasting happiness without the fear of its being broken, as we have experienced here in this world. The relationship with the Lord is never broken. And thus there is no grief and no fear. This is also explained in Brahma Samhita. I can't remember the Sanskrit word, but it is said in Brahma Samhita that the relationship with the Supreme Lord is never broken. And there is eternal happiness, unbroken happiness, exchanged with the Supreme Person. So the kind of neutral happiness, the Brahman happiness experienced in Brahman, is more or less a negation of misery. But the eternal happiness experienced with the Supreme Lord is a development of a joyful father-son relationship, or a lover-lover relationship, two-friendly relationship, two-friend relationship, or a relationship between a father, a mother, and a son, or vice versa. So that relationship is what is the highest form of ananda and the supreme bliss that the Lord is offering to the jiva. So Srila Prabhupada goes on to explain in the middle of the purport here that the personality as described in this verse transcends the impersonal conception of the Upanishads. Why? The Upanishads, the essence of the Vedas, so to speak, some of the Upanishads describing some of the essence of the Vedas, not all. Bhagavad Gita describes the essence of all the Vedas. But the Upanishad describes this Brahman because Upanishads, parts of the Vedas, describes matters related to Prakriti and modes of material nature. And they try an attempt to describe the transcendental knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in terms of description, in terms of narrations, but you have to go beyond the Vedas to actually get Krishna, to get the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And doesn't Krishna sort of reprimands Arjuna, says, Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna. He said, Oh Arjuna, the Vedic literature describe matters of three modes of material nature. So go beyond it and don't be fooled by the flowery words, flowery language of the Vedas. So in the very prayers of the personified Vedas to the personified Vedas to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Canto 10 in text 87, this is very nicely described by Sanat Kumar, by Sanat Kumar. And it is narrated by Narad Muni. And it's very interesting that the Vedas in the beginning of creation, they are the first to come out of the first breathing of Mahavishnu at the dawn of creation. When they come out, the personified Vedas, they come out at the very first breathe out of the personality of Mahavishnu. They try to start to praise the Supreme Personality of Godhead to wake him up for the creation. And in their prayers, they are saying that it is very difficult for us to worship you because our very creation, our very existence is for the material world. And therefore, it's for this creation, from this creation to understand something beyond limits is very difficult. So therefore, that word is there. It's a very long purport. That word is there again. It is described as Shabdapara. Yeah, Shabda Nayatra, that it is impossible to describe by words. So even the personified Vedas, they pray and they say it is impossible to describe by words. So Prabhupada, when he's saying here, the Upanishads are more or less a negation of material conception of things, right? Which means that the Upanishads is trying to explain to us about Prakriti more in detail and how she works, rather than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And where do we actually therefore draw the line is through bhakti, through devotion. Bhakti amam na vijanati. When we actually start to engage in service for which our senses are meant for. But first we have to undergo, Prabhupada says in the purport, we have to undergo the platform of purification of our senses. When we undergo the process of purification of our senses, then we can start to engage in devotional service. And by engaging in devotional service, we can actually start to develop our spontaneous and broken relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And naturally, Bhakti Yoga is a gradual process. And okay, I read this part. And also the liberated souls are not devoid of senses. Otherwise, there cannot be any reciprocation of unhampered spiritual happiness, exchange between them in spontaneous and broken joy. All the senses, both of the Lord and of the devotees, are without material contamination, which means that they're beyond the description even of the Vedas. They are so because they are beyond the material cause and effects. The senses, the pure spiritual senses, everything to do with the spiritual world, the devotees, the senses, the engagement of the spiritual senses with the senses of the Lord. That's what it is said here. Or without material contamination. They are so because they are beyond the material cause and effects. And clearly mentioned here, Sadasat Param. So the illusory material energy cannot work there, being ashamed before the Lord and his transcendental devotees. So she is bashful and ashamed. So in the material world, the sense activities are not without grief. So here, the sense activities, the polluted sense activities, connected to the body with the material conception. I am the body, my senses, my wife, my children, my house, my this, my that. Then there we have grief. So the senses in the material world are surcharged with material ignorance. In every way, the authorities have recommended purification of the senses. And here we manipulate our senses for personal gain, for personal enjoyment. in the spiritual world, it is quite the contrary. It is not a world of exploitation, it is a world of service. Here it is a world of exploitation. We're exploiting our own senses and exploiting others, people's senses and bodies, and everything that comes out, created. We try to exploit them, whereas in the spiritual world, the satisfaction of the senses are shared equally by transcendental reciprocators. So it's not like, oh, I enjoy my senses at your expense. No. The transcendental reciprocators between devotees, between the Lord, is actually a special arrangement. And this transcendental happiness, the quality of that happiness called Brahma Shokyam, transcendental happiness. It's a very long, beautiful purport. Actually, it is so full of information. Last time I had a purport which was 2 lines. This time I have a purport that is very nice. So this is my Christmas and New Year gift. So I'll stop here. It's very nice. So we can open up some discussions. We have some wonderful devotees here. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, as usual. I think Srila Prabhupada perfectly arranged this, because the other time you only had like 1 or 2 sentences. And this time, Srila Prabhupada says, I'll give you what you didn't have the other time.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Krishna Prabhu, please give me a mute.
Mr. Prabhu, my humble obeisances, Prabhu.
Haribol Kusha.
Yes, thank you for your class. My question is exploitation of each other, as you just mentioned now. How can I stop anybody from exploiting my humble self and my good heart? I want to know how to stop people from abusing me and exploiting me.
Can you repeat the question, Sahadev?
How can I stop people from abusing me or exploiting me? Like you said in the class.
People, you mean? People
yes,
abusing.
Yes, humanity,
okay.
Yes.
Abusing and exploiting.
How can you stop people from abusing and exploiting? Well, this is a world of exploitation. This is a world of exploitation. This is a world where, as one Acharya wrote, this is a world of Milton's Paradise Lost. You know, you actually will be exploited here. No matter what you do, you will be exploited. But when are we more or less exploited is when we try to enjoy our senses. And that's what Prabhupada says in this purport. You see, the pure devotees, they don't feel a sense of exploitation. Just think about, the acharyas, Pusha. The acharyas never feel that they're being exploited. So why? Okay, so then to understand that, Srila Prabhupada never felt, okay, I'm being exploited by material nature. Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami doesn't feel like I'm being exploited by material nature or by anyone else. So because when we try to enjoy our senses, like Prabhupada says in the very first part of this, he said, when we try to enjoy our senses, there's a contrast here. There's material inebriety here. And then there is grief. So the real pain that you feel is explained in chapter 5, text 22 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evati. So when you feel exploited, when you feel under someone's dominion, or you feel under someone's, pressure, it is generally because that is what is the sense of grief and pain. But Krishna described that source of grief and pain in this chapter 5, text 22. He says, Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evati. Dukkha yonaya evati. He said, one who desires to bring in contact his senses with sense objects, yehi samsparshaja bhoga. Dukkha yonaya evati. The description is a word yoni. Yoni means womb. This is a very, yes, here it is. Dukkha yonaya evati. Yeah, that word here, yonaya. Yonaya is more or less the yoni or the womb or the birthplace of misery. So he says, the contact of material senses with sense objects is a birthplace here. Is a birthplace. No, put it up. Yeah. Okay, is a birthplace. Dukkha yonaya evate. So when you feel exploited, which is actually experience misery, experience domination, experience exploitation, is actually the result of bad fruitive activities. And it has a beginning and an end, because it is not like to describe it as contrary to material conception of happiness. It's always given this kind of explanation. Adi andavanta konteya nateshu ramate putha. It has a beginning and an end. So even if you feel an exploitation, Krishna is so kind to say, but it has a beginning and an end. Like I said, for the pure devotees, there is no sense of they being exploited. Right? Like Lord Chaitanya, he described, he says, whether you embrace me or you crush me with your feet, I'm your servant, a birth after birth. So the pure devotee in all his, even in the material world, in all his endeavors, in all his service, he doesn't feel exploited. So the feeling of exploitation is subjective. It is not objective.
Okay, Prabhu, but what of if I make a donation, for example, to a religious movement or to a temple for a project, and that donation is not used for that project? Am I not being exploited?
Oh, how do I answer this question? Well, then you have to, you mean the answer to that question is, who's going to get the reaction for it?
I don't know. I want to know.
Who's going to get the reaction? Are you going to get, when you're done, you're going to reap the benefit of giving something for the right purpose.
But it's not used for that right purpose, so how can I get the benefits?
You will get the benefit because your intentions are there. You get the benefit because your intentions were right, and it is born out of the fruitive result or the sacrifice, so to speak, of your endeavor, and it is related to your action. And whatever someone else does with it, that will be amplified into sinful activities for that person, because you are neither the propitiator of the effect of your donation. You gave your donation, you end there. Now, what happens with that donation and who initiates what actions with that money? You are not the initiator of action. Krishna is, Paramatma is. So therefore, you initiated one action, but the chain of reaction to that action, you're not responsible for it. You're only responsible for what you feel and what you do. But beyond what you feel and what you do, if you've done it in mode of goodness, then whatever result or whatever sequence of events followed there is being controlled by Paramatma and Prakriti, impulsed by the desires of other living beings. Where do you come in there? If you go beyond your field of activities, which is you, your mind, your body, your senses, and all that you survey or pursue within your kshetra, your field of activities, you're responsible for that. You're not responsible for someone else's action. And anyway, even that Lakshmi or whatever you gave, right, was a transformation of your desire, which was effected within Prakriti, and then someone else take on from there, and therefore they have to acquire the good or bad karma. You don't have to worry about that.
Okay,
Technically,
Prabhu.
what I'm saying, Kusha, your responsibility stops there.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu.
Now, if you want to do it as a service, as a service to Krishna, and you want to see some result, then you can take a second or third step, but with detachment. With detachment, knowing that you've done what you have done And if Krishna doesn't want to propitiate a better result to what you have done, then you might look into some other avenues to serve. But you're not exploited by your good actions.
Hare
Okay.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Kusha.
But there's a quote of Srila Prabhupada where he said that keeping silence, you are also guilty and a participant of that crime.
Yes, like I said to you, you can follow up. Like I did say, you want
All right.
to give better result to your service, then you can follow it. But I said to you, if you follow up with attachment and with to some expectation of result and so on and so forth, then you will be implicated.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
So you follow up without expectation of result and with detachment, as a matter of duty, as a matter of service.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. I think it's the most perfect advice to be given by anybody else. When you were reciting the Mangalacharam, Prabhuji,
Yes.
day, and also when you were reading the slokas, I was reminded how we sometimes hear from others that in the spiritual world, their speech is like song, their walk is like a dance. The way you were reading it was just like singing. So that kind of reminded me, well, this must be true, that in the spiritual world, just talking is just like singing. So how nice it would be being in the spiritual world. But I have this question which I do not think relates directly to today's theme. But I have this question. It's something confusing to me, and I think you might be able to help me and maybe other devotees also. We understand that we have 4 yugas: Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali.
Yes.
And in Satya Yuga, there are like 100% religious people. And then Treta 75, Dwapara 50, Kali 25, like that. Again, we also understand that at the end of Kali Yuga, all the 11 entities are kept. They are all swept up and then kept in the body of Mahavishnu. And then in Satya Yuga, Mahavishnu brings out these beings that were kept in his divine body. If they are out of Lord Mahavishnu's body, they're all going to resume wherever they were at. And in Kali Yuga, everybody that was swept up into the body of Mahavishnu were like tamasic. So how is it that in the Satya Yuga, when they came out of Mahavishnu's body, they all of a sudden become pious people, like 100% religious? How does that work?
Okay.
I don't know if you get my question.
Yeah, I get your point. First,
Okay.
there's a question of right proportionality of presentation. The first thing is I will try to add to your question is, it is not that there is a destruction at the end of each cycle of 4 yugas. No, there is a destruction. There's a partial destruction at the end of 1,000 cycle of 4 yugas, which is called one kalpa. And one kalpa representing 1 day of Lord Brahma. So there is a partial annihilation every day in the evening or the night of Lord Brahma at the end of the day of Lord Brahma. And 1 day of Brahma is 1,000 cycle of 4 yugas, which means that Satya, Treta, Dwapar, Kali. Satya, Treta, Dwapar, Kali goes on for 1,000 cycles. That represents a day of Lord Brahma. and the same length represent a night of Lord Brahma. So there is a naimitiki pralay. There's a partial annihilation. Now, that partial annihilation, which means that the annihilation goes all the way from the lower planetary systems all the way up to the Swargaloka, to the heavenly planets. But beyond the heavenly planets, Jana, Mahartapa, all these lokas are not destroyed. And now let me explain a little bit more so that you understand the full scale of things. So then when we talk about a day of Lord Brahma, in a day of Lord Brahma, there's 1,000 cycles of yugas. So if you take 1,000, you divide by 14. In 14 shifts, like one day of Lord Brahma into 14 shifts, 14 intervals. One interval is called Manvantara. And in that one Manvantara, which is the rulership of a Manu. A Manu is like a prime minister. He comes with his whole body of sons, followers, advisors, even sometimes an incarnation of the Supreme Lord, and all bunch of demigods, and also sometimes rishis and sages. They come with him like a whole cabinet, like a whole management, government cabinet. And within that one day of Brahma, they take 1/14 of the day of Brahma and they manage. And within that Manvantara, there are also Naimitik Pralay. There's devastation. So it's devastation. So the principle of devastation only happening at the end. No, it goes on. There's devastation. Like when I die, it's my devastation. My body, my whole karma, my whole actions are all like now going to get a new life. So there is this devastation, right? And if one becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, and his body is destroyed at the end of this life, he has no karma left. He goes back home, back to Godhead. So within that long cycle of yugas and divya yugas, which is a cycle of Satya Treta Dwapar Kali, and within the cycle of fourth, Manvantara, and within the cycle of a day of Brahma, and then Brahma goes on to live for 100 years of that. So there are so many opportunities for the jivas to recycle themselves. It is not just a one-time opportunity. There's so many opportunities for the jiva to come to an understanding of devotional service. Why we say like that? Because the whole material creation is a reformatory. It is meant to give us that opportunity. So it is not only just one opportunity and one chance that is given to all of us. It is over and over and over again. And when, after the life of Lord Brahma, this material universe is destroyed. The whole material universe is destroyed, right? And all other universes still may not be destroyed, right? But when all the universes are destroyed, then everyone goes back. Now, how all the universes are destroyed, Lord Sankarshan becomes angry with us. He says, I've given you over and over and over again, I've given you opportunity to reform yourselves for eons and eons and eons of yugas. And then he gets angry, and then fire comes out from the bottom of the universe and destroys the whole thing. And then everything gets assimilated into the body of Lord Vishnu. And then Lord Vishnu goes to sleep. And then the next creation comes. So when that destruction of that creation is coming, now this will answer your question, right? Everyone in different planets or in different level of spiritual understanding. Not everyone is just at the end of Kali Yuga. In the different planetary systems, in the different universes, different personalities, right? And they're on the different level of spiritual attainment or non-attainment, wherever they are. And therefore that get sort of, locked in. Their swabhava, or their acquired nature, and the guna, the qualities, and the karma get locked into the body of Lord Vishnu. And therefore, when he exhales again and create the universes, the jivas get put into the universes from where they were, in terms of swabhava, acquired nature, and karma. So this is a huge, big cycle, and everyone is getting an opportunity. Does that give a better image?
Yeah. Not very clear, but I am getting a clue as to what you're saying, that it's not like just one time and everything is finished. The different opportunities are given. So
Yeah, and also the Kali Yuga,
yeah,
the Kali Yuga is kind of a measurement of interval of time. And it's not that there's no Sat Yuga, Trita Yuga, Kali Yuga in all the other planetary systems. It's also there. But the influences are different.
yeah,
That's just like, for example, it's Kali Yuga here,
yeah,
right? And within the cycle of Yuga, this is going on. So the influence of Kali Yuga is also felt in the other planetary systems, but it is not exactly to the same extent.
yeah.
They are different. It is subtle. It is not so prevalent. Like in the heavenly planets, they will not be killing cows.
Hmm.
So then, if you consider the sum total of jivas in the universes, then it gives a little bit more understanding to your query.
Right. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. This teaching is too deep for a hollow headed person like me. Any devotee with any question, comments, please? Jay Prabhu, I think you had your hand up. Do you have something to ask? Oh, Govinda Prabhu, you have something to say? All right, Jay
Yes,
Prabhu.
Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Okay, go ahead then. Yes, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, Dandava Pranams. All glories to Guru Deva and glories to Prabhupada. All glories to you. Yeah, Prabhu, could you please explain the difference between the mind, the consciousness, and the soul? Sometimes you said that whatever a man thinks at the point of death will determine his next nature. Another time we also said that whatever consciousness that one displays at the point of death also give birth to the soul in his next body. So these two states of consciousness is being displayed in these two phases. What
Okay.
we think and the consciousness that we display. So what is the difference between the mind
Yeah, I can understand your
and the
question.
consciousness?
I can understand. Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada talks about our contaminated consciousness. This is called chitta. So when we talk about the soul, the symptom of the soul is consciousness. But the consciousness, when it is filtered through our material conception, it becomes contaminated consciousness. So therefore, in the beginning, when we talk about mind, we talk about a certain part, a certain aspect of this chitta, which is a repository of desires, which is a repository of wanting to do things. But chitta itself is material consciousness. So it's not that we have to understand only the soul, but we also have to understand chitta, material consciousness. We also have to understand buddhi, which is intelligence, and then we have to understand mind. So these four things you have to understand: the soul, then material consciousness, which when perceived, the consciousness pervading from the soul, when perceived through the body, is called contaminated consciousness. That's why Prabhupada said contaminated consciousness. And then intelligence, whereby we can discern from one to the other. And the mind, which is a repository of all our experiences through different lifetimes. So then, when we say that the mind, we have to purify the mind, that actually means we have to purify all of the three elements: the chitta, the material consciousness, where we think I am, enjoyer. We have to also purify intelligence, where we have all kinds of ideas of how to enjoy. We have to purify the mind, which keeps experiences and desires of everything that we have experienced. And to purify these, the only way to do that is to repetitively chant the holy name of Krishna. So we have to go through the process of purifying our consciousness, which is called the chitta. So the soul will have consciousness. The symptom of the soul is to generate consciousness in your body. But that consciousness is filtered through the ego, through the mind, through the senses, through the intelligence, and therefore it gives us a general feeling, I'm the body, but you're actually soul. So the contaminated consciousness, the central pivot of all the senses that acquire all the information from this material creation is actually the mind. It is a central processor. The central processor is actually the mind. So it is, sorry, the central processor is more like the intelligence. The mind is like the hard disk. It is keeping everything. Right? And then, you know, you are processing all these different desires that you have acquired through generations and generations or lifetimes of lifetimes, and it is there. And suddenly you have a desire for this and you desire for that, because that is stored, you know, within the mind. And then for the intelligence will give more or less the ability to put that desire into action, right? And all that is done within that material consciousness, which is called chitta. So when you actually go through second, third canto, you will understand that slowly, you know, especially that's why it is very important, you know, Govinda, is to understand it technically. Srimad Bhagavatam in the first, second, and third canto has a lot of explanations about creation. So basically it explains the creation of the senses, the creation of the mind, the creation of the intelligence, the creations of the false ego, the chitta, the material consciousness, the soul, the karma, and all of these, and how they form an embedded network of 25 elements covering the soul, which is called Sankhya, which is understanding these things. So this, as you go through, you will see, but it is an interesting question. As you go through, you will see, I hope that I've explained some part of it. And the mind is a repository of everything that you have experienced. And unless you purify the mind, right, by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the consciousness will not become purified. Because you start from the lower rungs. You purify the senses by acting devotionally. And then you use your senses for acting in Krishna's service. Then slowly, the pure water rises and submerges the mind. And then the mind becomes more and more pure. And then the intelligence becomes pure because you are using the intelligence of the spiritual master. Then the ego doesn't start to think within the pure, crystal clear understanding of these things. The ego starts to think, I'm servant of Krishna. And then the full consciousness, the material consciousness, the chitta, becomes purified, where you start to think, I'm servant of Krishna. Then that is a pure identity of the soul. I hope I managed to explain to some extent.
Yeah, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for the answer. How I wish this mind were like an object I can just lay my hand on, because this mind has been very, very troublesome. And you can't find it to catch it and deal nicely with the mind. This mind is the very thing killing me. But we'll see. Anyone else with something to share?
Kusha has his hands up. I don't know. Kusha?
Oh, yeah, Kusha.
Yes, Maharaj. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Arjuna asked Krishna, "Oh Govinda, of what use is killing my kinsmen who are desirous to fight, even if I may enjoy the trade world?" Then I want to ask, of what use is trying to understand all these different incarnations, like Sade was saying, when Brahma inhale or exhale? Of what use is all this detailed information? And we are told also not to speculate. In trying to understand the philosophy and speculating, trying to understand the Lord, are we really not committing offense unknowingly on trying to know God? I want to know this.
Oh, because it is, we are trying to learn by studying Srila Prabhupada's purports and what the acharyas have written. The very purpose of the acharyas writing this is they know what we need to hear. And in the first canto, you can read this very beautiful verse. I cannot quite remember it. And it says that we don't know what is good for us. But Vyasadeva, he knows. And therefore, he has written this Samhita. And by this Samhita means this Srimad Bhagavatam. He knows what is good for us. In our condition, we don't know what's good for us. But he knows what is a good subject matter for us. And he's written it in a way that is very attractive to all of us, even in its speculative fashion. So when in the different sittings of Srimad Bhagavatam, there are different kind of personalities that were there, Kusha. Just like we can expect just in our small sitting of Srimad Bhagavatam here, we may have 15, 16 people, and we may all be of different, inclination. But it has always been like that. So when Shukadeva Goswami was speaking Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj, thousands and thousands of sages were there. They were not of the same disposition. But everyone understood different things in different way. So the process of mental speculation is as old, as ancient as the creation itself. But within that, we will slowly move from speculating to accepting the absolute truth from the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. So as we go on studying Srimad Bhagavatam, systematic study of Srimad Bhagavatam, we will experience a change in consciousness. But the sad thing, I would personally submit, the sad thing that I have seen is us devotees, we are not so willing to undergo a systematic study of Srimad Bhagavatam, which may take 8-9 years in the assembly of devotees. And if we undergo the systematic study of Srimad Bhagavatam with the right consciousness, and with not a challenging mood, that this is what Vyasadeva, the literary reincarnation of Krishna, the Supreme Lord himself, Lord Narayan himself, has prescribed to me. He knows what is good for me, right? And therefore, I need to go through that process of hearing, trying to understand, but I have to go systematically. Now, if you look at the practical aspect of it, Srila Prabhupada has actually taken that systematic study of Srimad Bhagavatam and he's put it like this for us, verse to verse. And we are doing that. And by going through the process of systematic study of Srimad Bhagavatam, you will experience an extraordinary change in consciousness. Now, to say, but is there any other process? I think not. You have to chant the holy name of Krishna. You have to study Srimad Bhagavatam. You have to associate with devotees. You have to worship the deity, and you have to, try to be in a holy place as possible. These are minimum the 5 aspects, the 5 angas of devotional service. And through that process, we will come to the understanding of, what is good for me. And the process is a process of inquiry, the process of submissive hearing, the process of seva. Pariprashnena, pranipata, pariprashnena, seva. It's the only process. So it's not that when we come to accept the guru, then we say, okay, I have to go through the process of, pranipata, I have to pay obeisances, accept the guru, get initiated. That's the beginning. But that process carries on. We carry on the process of surrender, pranipata. We carry on the process of pariprashnena, but with a mood of seva. That will have to carry on, Kusha, till the end of our lives. What choice? What other choice do we have?
None.
No choice. The other choice, or face the world of exploitation.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the beautiful answer.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I think it says Atato Brahma Jigyasa. So
Yes.
that is what we are asked to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just to give you a humble example, I've been carrying a systematic study of Srimad Bhagavatam. Some of my students may be here. Two of them are here, at least, so maybe three. Yeah. And this is my 4th year, and I do twice a week. And I systematically, we study Srimad Bhagavatam together. And I'm conducting this class for the last 4 years. And within the first year, it was a bit difficult, and I had to restart twice to be able to get a lot of devotees on board. Now I may have about 75 or 80 devotees on board the class, and it goes every Tuesday and every Friday. And then now we just graduated all the students from Canto Free. You know, there was about 43 students graduated systematic study Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1 to Canto 3. And now we are in the middle of Canto 4. We've done chapter 16. And Maharaj Prithu, praises of Maharaj Prithu. Now tomorrow, we'll start another chapter 17 or 18, yeah. And it will go on. And the devotees with me, and I've been repeatedly saying to them, and Jai is one of the devotees, and Gopali is one of the devotees. And I've been saying to them, this is going to take us the best part of our lives. Mm-hmm. And I'm committed to studying with them, together with them. I'm leading the study. And, we'll finish 4th canto, hopefully in 4 or 5 months, and then 5th canto by the end of next year. Right? And then by the year 2025, we'll finish 6th canto. And then maybe in 4 or 5 years, we'll finish the whole canto, but we are going thoroughly.
Beautiful.
And so but the thing I'm saying is to you is Kusha, is when you and I and Sahadev and Govinda and Varaha Prabhu, hopefully he's still in the temple. We were in the temple. Then we were doing systematic study of Srimad Bhagavatam every morning, right, Kusha?
Yes, yes, Prabhu.
Now we are not.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Now we are out there in the congregation in the big wide world, and we're not.
Now we are very, very advanced.
No, we kind of got off the train. We got off the train.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, because in Mauritius also the same configuration is there. There is like maybe thousands of congregation devotees and hardly many devotees in the. So I've tried to regroup some of the devotees in the congregation, and we're studying. So we study about, I don't know, we study about like a chapter, depending on how many verses, in 2 or 3 sittings. And our sitting is 2 hours, right? At Tuesday, I will start, and within 2 hours, I will cover 10, 12 verses. Because I'm the only speaker, because I'm kind of the lead student. So I'm the only speaker. So there's no repetition. There's no repetition of subject matter. There is like a systematic study. We move on from one subject to the other. And it makes, what is your experience, Jay? Can you tell them? Or Gopali?
Jay, you may unmute, please. I'd love to hear your voice anyway, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Jai Shri Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam. All glories to and Gauranga. Yes, very nice, Prabhu. Advaita has properly explained everything regarding the systematic study of Srimad Bhagavatam that we do regularly on Tuesdays and Fridays. It's very, very nice, really very interesting. I find the purports extremely instructive, especially, I would say, with all humility, for people who would like to understand. I mean, it covers a broad variety of subjects. So I'm only highlighting what I believe maybe one of the parts interesting, at least from my point of view, for people to know about is what is going on in our modern civilization. That is about these people who may not know because they have never heard of it or read books of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, about, for example, the situation of governments, you know, the misguided civilization, the difficulties that people are experiencing almost across every country. You know, all these
Especially
problems.
in relationship to Prithu Maharaj's instruction you're speaking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I mean, we have seen with all due respect, even before Prithu Maharaj, I remember His Divine Grace has spoken about it in other cantos as well, probably because he felt that this is so important for people to understand. So he talked about this misguided civilization, the problems of governments, and then also all the kinds of difficult situation, why it is happening, why we are in Kali Yuga, so that people know that and come to believe progressively that we are really in an age called Kali Yuga, and what are the characteristics of this age of Kali Yuga that people may be experiencing in their everyday life, but without knowing about it because they never heard of it, never read of it, or never listened to any explanation of His Divine Grace or other devotees talking about it. So yes, very nice, very important as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. So yeah, please study. I think you can. But this is a good thing to study. But when you study verse by verse, you will have a lot of repetition. A lot of things are repeated, and therefore you progress very slowly. And I progressed very slowly in the first year. Like I said, I had to restart the first canto 2 or 3 times because I didn't have enough devotees. But then I persevered with it, and sometimes I was traveling, an hour every evening to go to the different places to give the classes and gather the devotees. But when you have a systematic study and it's structured, like for example, the Bhakti Vaibhava program is very nice, but then only few people, because there's a sort of academic rigor, to follow. But the systematic study in itself is very much required. Nityam Bhagavatam Sevaya. But every day we are reading one verse here, which is very nice. And within 9 years, you will completely study it. Yeah, thank you. Hare Krishna Prabhu. We end here.
Hare Krishna. So maybe we bring this to a close. We thank you all for being here, and we thank our revered speaker, His Grace ADVAITA KRISHNA Prabhu, for being here and sharing his wisdom and love with us all. And at this point, we're going to humbly request all the devotees to kindly unmute, and we all chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our appreciation. Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Rama,
Rama
Rama Hare Hare.
Panchakalpatarubhyascha,
Kripa Sindhyatmacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
all glories to His Grace ADVAITA KRISHNA Prabhu Ki
Oh,
Jai.
Jai. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.